Hey, Blue Table fan. Wait a second. Hold on. I don't think I'll be able to get it right. Okay. Listen up. I'm here to talk about Dune, the role-playing game. Yeah. Well, and usually when I go to the game shop and look at and touch absolutely everything they have there for like the 20th time, my ex-wife used to just be like, Sean, you've seen all of this before. Why are you down here? I'm like, shh, I'm making the holy passage to look at everything in the same game shop again. And I go to the role-playing section and there's this sort of pathetic panoply of different one-shot vanity books up there. Like Terranoth, for example. That's one I've seen recently. And a lot of times a subclass of vanity books, and by the way, I can't like criticize this because I'm hoping to do my own soon. A subclass of that is the motion picture one, where it's like Aliens, the role-playing game, Warehouse 13, the role-playing game, and that they just kind of did it. And now with Kickstarter, where you can get a bunch of people just to invest their money, and Kickstarter's just like ripped a bunch of stuff to pieces. I've got mixed feelings about it. Mostly good. So now, pretty much any old schmuck can get their book published now, and through Kickstarter. It's like, well, no risk. I guess people didn't want this, so in that possible future, we never did the book. Anyway, so I come across, I kept going past this book here, and I'm like, you're so beautiful. And then it's like, you're so beautiful, I'll put you on the list. And then I was like, I might run this, better take a look. And I did, and of course the game's awesome, went to go see the movie, loved the movie, great aesthetic and stuff like that. I'm sure other people have reviewed this book better than me. By the way, they can't, a la Wizards of the Coast, is that who puts this out? Oh no, it's Modiphius, who I have historically mispronounced Mophidius. And then Legendary, which I think is a film studio, right? And it's 2D20 system. So I'm familiar with that. I'll get into that in just a minute. And yes, Dune. By the way, you can be my Facebook friend. Look me up on Facebook. Friend me. I think I have like 3,600 friends. That's meaningless. I thought at first it was like a email list, like a newsletter, that every time I put out a post, it would go to all 3,600 people. Oh no, that's not what it is at all. It goes out to very few, very much less than that, let's just say. But I do wonder if enough people scroll down far enough, if Facebook gets desperate to fill that content space, that eyeball space. All right, more about that in the future. All right, so I get Dune, the book, and it's problematic to run a game in somebody else's setting because you can't just make new stuff up. I mean, you can, but you have sort of that cloud looming over you as the creator of an adventure where your players might be like, oh, well, that's not faithful to the source material. Just like a person making a movie is. And so I usually shy away from those because I really tend to go off on my own tangents, have some fun with it. And of course, you're working with pre-existing characters in this universe. And that's a big question. If you're going to run Dune, are they going to come across any of these main characters? In the case of the one that I'm running, the answer is no. That's all distant events. And thankfully, the original author, Frank Herbert, he made a pretty big universe. When I was immersing myself in all the backstory and the lore, there's been 6 books that he wrote, a 7th that I think a successor wrote. Those are the kind of the main books. And then there's been a ton of other books written by other people involved in it somehow. And the main books were written all in the 60s and 70s, if I have my timeline correct. See, I'm kind of second-guessing myself to give correct information. So it's this cloud sort of hanging over the subsequent creator. So I'm just going to throw all that out, make the #1 rule be don't call me on issues where it matches up or not, because there's only so much lore you can absorb in 2 weeks before you're doing your session 0 or your session 1. And when I put on a game, boy, it is a spectacle. I put a lot into it. I come prepared. I get on Facebook forums where people are like, my players didn't show up. And I'm like, yeah, well, you gotta, maybe if you made something great. Oh, what a terrible thing to say. Because obviously there can be lots of different situations. But I really think that if you really put it in there, the time, that you'll have people more likely to show up. And that's a fact, that humans will show up to things that they're interested in. Oh, humans. And like, the older I get, the less I want to hear excuses. Like, I'll just respect you if you were like, yeah, I felt lazy, or I didn't feel like doing it, so I didn't do it. Because if humans want something, they will show up. Think about this scenario. Let's say somebody wins a prize of $100,000, but they have to show up at the station at 1 p.m. on Friday. You think they're going to be there? Oh, yeah. Do you think if they're blocked in traffic that that's going to stop them from being there? No. They'll pull over and run the rest of the way. They'll mount the curb and go down the sidewalk for that 100 grand. Because everybody makes these little calculations of importance in their head, and that's just it. So, and texting, like, oh yeah, I was busy, I couldn't text you. No, you weren't busy. Texting does not take that much time. It takes 15 seconds, 30 seconds to just tell me it wasn't important. All right. So back to getting a group together. So I buy the rule book. I'm starting to read it. I already know a little bit about the 2D20 system. This book, let me tell you, this is a lot. This is a system where I'm just like, I'm going to have to really adjust how I do things in order to use this. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. Wow, I'm already at 7.5 minutes. All right, so I get the book. And then, of course, I don't just sit on my thumbs for something. I just get going with it. So I put out a thing saying, like a little email to some people that kind of popped into my head. I'm like, yeah, I've got 6 seats. And so guess what? I have 8 people coming tomorrow. Yeah. And by the way, I'm going to be ready to run competently that many people. It's going to be great. The system really accommodates itself to very quick storytelling. And it also, just like the books, you have different scenes where there's different people, so you could have half of your group just not in that scene. But how they manage that very well in this particular rule book is that you run multiple characters. So you run a main character, and then you have other people that you sort of inhabit. And in a scene, you could just be like, okay, you're the maid, you're the poison snooper or whatever, and they just sort of jump in to whatever the scene is. And so I have ideas with that. I'll talk more about it later if I do a follow-up to this video. Tomorrow, Friday, we're doing our session 0, Session Shiro, and I'm pretty excited about it. And I have a lot of ideas. I got to see kind of where people are with making characters and maybe what they want to do. But I have a feeling with this group, if I just come in with some strong concepts, maybe 2 or 3 of them, they'll be able to make their characters around that. And that's probably the better way to do it than just say, oh, well, make your characters and then I'll sort of figure out how they fit in. No, I'm going to make the tagline for the movie and like the initial crawl that says, this is what's happening. And in my game, I'm starting it right in the main action of where the current movie is and what most people are familiar with as DUNE, the initial book. However, DUNE spans like 5,000 years, and it's let me tell you, there's some out there stuff. And so in the rule book, it talks about the different settings that you could have it in. But really, the Imperium, which is the one we're all familiar with, I think that's kind of where you gotta do it. And there is, so back to having elements in there, I think that the actual rule book and even the source material is pretty thin on specific sorts of like equipment that your character can have, ammunition for firearms and stuff like that. It's a lot for a science fiction novel, but it's not very much for a role-playing book. And in the core book, they can only fit so much stuff. So I'm going to pack it in with some really great ideas, really make it my own, and my objective is to make it so that, first off, anything I introduce is covered technically inside the lore. Like, this group of people could have conceivably made those types of things. So I'm not going to go all weird and off the rails. The second thing is, if I'm going to introduce something, I want it to sound like something that could actually be in the universe, that it has a certain amount of deception to it, that someone maybe that wasn't intimately familiar with all of the background would be like, oh, did I miss that? Is that something from the books? So as long as I have that question in their mind, I can maintain that authenticity to it, yet still flesh out corners of the universe that my characters, making up their own story, will be able to experience. So I'm super excited about it. And that's me. I had everything figured out at age 13. To be a dungeon master, to be a rules maker for games, to be a storyteller, to be a bard, and to bring people into adventures. That's real exciting. And real life adventures too. I'm the kid that would get the other kids to go in and make a treehouse. And as I get older, I've gotten a little jaded in recent years, so I've sort of lost that adventuresome Peter Pan, hey, let's fly to Neverland urge. All right, I'm getting a very important call, so I will see you guys later. And that's all I had to say anyway. Thanks for tuning in.